Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Fearless Floyd Show. As always, I am your host, Fearless Floyd, and we're back with Chapter 2 of Noel Benoist, Lifetime Adventures. Chapter 2 will be dealing with the pedagogy of Noel. And I went and selected that word because I wanted to teach you a new word today. Pedagogy. That's exactly what it means. I'm educating you. I'm teaching you, mentoring you. And that's what this looks like. We're going to talk about Noel's early life because his father was somebody as well. And we're going to go into that and what that looked like for Noel as he was raised as a child with his father. A chance, I don't know if it's a chance, no, it wasn't even a chance meeting. It was sought after by, I don't know if he was a then general or a president, but we're going to get into that. So I'll be right back with Noel Benoist and the pedagogy of Noel. All right, everybody. I am back with Noel. He's backstage, and I'm going to bring him on, and we can begin the show with our new word for the day, pedagogy. All right, how you doing, Noel?
Breathing, and that's a good day.
Right?
Especially some of the stuff I've done.
Breathing and nobody knocking at your door.
Well, and your backstage is bigger than this. I did one stakeout one time, literally in a broom closet. And I mean
wow.
a little broom closet.
That's nuts.
My butt was against one wall, my ear was against the other wall because we could hear through into the bathroom. And I was basically the listener all day, all night. And they put
Wow.
a deal claiming that chemicals had spilled. Nobody should open the broom closet. And yeah, I was in there 24 hours, ear up against the wall.
Wow.
You got to learn how to hold it.
Yeah. Yeah, I can imagine. Surprised y'all didn't have some Q gadget you could use like James Bond.
Yeah.
All right. So today's show, we're going to talk about your youth and your father and how your relationship with your father and his life developed you into the person that you are. And tell us about that venture and take us back to, I guess, your earliest memories of how that all entailed. Tell us who your father is.
Well, my dad was Thomas Malcolm Benoist, and he actually was the guy that kept the Normandy Day invasion records with him 24/7. Youngest protege from Northern California going to University of California. And I think he was something like 19 when he graduated with 3 master's degrees in engineering. And he went into Signal Corps, youngest colonel promoted, not rifted after the war. They wanted to give him a star, but he decided to come home, and he took over as the commander for the National Guard for California. And there was just my dad. I think, it was kind of like my dad had been prepared by God and by his dad and grandfather. And basically, my great grandfather was one of the people or the main person that guided Peter Lassen across Canada and down into California here in the Mount Lassen area. And so I had just a fantastic great granddad who was an adventurer, and my granddad always said, if you got a chance to do something, do it. And he did everything. I mean, he was a champion boxer. They wouldn't give him a title fight until he was something like over 40 because they were afraid of him. And he did logging, mining. He was a bush pilot and fought forest fires before they really got paid for fighting forest fires. So I had that adventure there. And then time with my dad, and my dad still had some, like, some spy and classified documents. Matter of fact, before Pearl Harbor, they knocked something like 7 Japanese mini subs out of the water in classified areas around Pearl Harbor and up and down California. So they actually knew, they knew Japan was coming. They baited them into it because they knew if they didn't get into war, that basically Hitler would win. And so they made like they were talking peace with the Japs. They knew the Japanese would attack. Matter of fact, I even read the stuff on it, and it was called Operation Magician. So I think that's where MJ-12 probably got some of their ideas from, the way they did the Pearl Harbor thing and that. But Roosevelt said that the people of America would not enter the war unless they were angered enough to do so. So they basically sacrificed thousands of American lives in order to get America to enter the war and stop Hitler. And my dad kept the Normandy Day invasion records on his person 24/7. He became pretty well known. I kind of took after him, I guess, because he just did things that a lot of people might think was outlandish, or, well, you can't do that, but he did them successfully. And so I kind of took my cue off of him and my granddad. And I just kind of, I guess, raised a rebel to some degree, but basically taught to be a smart, extremely effective rebel, because if you get the job done, they might be mad at you, but it won't be for long. So that was kind of my philosophy when I was in, and that was about the way it went too. There were more than once say, yeah, we should court martial you, but by God, you were successful, so here's a medal. And knew the medals wouldn't be on my record anyway because it was classified. So, but it made kind of a fun deal. And actually, if the outfit would have straightened up, my background and the stories from my great granddad and my granddad and my dad and the things that they did, I really would have loved staying in. And I didn't care about being in the limelight or being the one who gets the credit all the time. For me, the fun was the adventure. So doing the mission and being successful at it, and some of it right under the enemy nose. That I basically designed that one. As a matter of fact, Hunt for Red October, that was an intel leak. That was off a true story. And we took that guy, we hid him right under the nose of the enemy. And so I did things like that. That was me, kind of wild and woolly, and even as a child. But my dad would never really get after me if I did something like that. If I, say, broke something, messed something up or whatever, instead he would kind of sit down with me and say, okay, where'd you make your mistake? And he would have me analyze it and learn from it. And I think that also started my analytical brain rolling. But my dad not only had the audiovisual memory, he had the mathematical calculating memory that was just, I mean, phenomenal. You could make a 16-foot wall full of numbers about an inch tall or whatever, all the way across the wall, and have add, plus, divide, multiply, just put it random. And he would read it, and instead of going column by column, he would just read the whole thing, go to the left-hand side, and write the answer all the way across the bottom. And he would be right on. So I don't have the brain that he had. I mean, his was probably max scientific, but at least the good Lord gave me enough of his brain and maybe a little of my mom's brain to kind of temper it a little or whatever. I guess some of the justice side and everything. So that really kind of formed the foundation for when I went in. And then I got involved in, I was involved in Cub Scouts, Boy Scouts, I was one of the youngest tenderfoot or whatever in Boy Scouts. I flew through Cub Scouts and that. And matter of fact, they had the Boy Scout camp. And as far as I know, I'm the only scout that ever went to that camp. And I advanced 2 ranks in 1 2-week camp. I got my first class scout and my star with 5 or 6 merit badges in 1 2-week camp. And so they honored me for that. And I kind of liked, I guess, kind of maxing out or going at the max. And football the same way. Matter of fact, they played me in a lot of different positions in football. I was on special teams. I'd be in for special teams. I'd be in for offense. I'd be in for defense. So that was kind of like full go power from the get-go.
Well, tell us, when you tell us about, okay, I played football, tell us where you went to school, what year this was, give us some color.
A little background.
Some
Okay,
color,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. We'll have to make sure it's not all in the book so they don't steal my identity. But I went to school in a little town called Central Valley. And matter of fact, the high school there is still called Central Valley High. And I basically, actually my junior year, I transferred from Central Valley High to Wairika High School. And at Central Valley High, I got into art and acting. And matter of fact, my dad being a spy, I used to love to watch Woody Strode in the Tarzan movies and some of his westerns and everything. To me, Woody Strode, Black Gladiator that fought Kirk Douglas and Spartacus, 108 Tarzan movies, the main nemesis with Tarzan. He was the best character actor to me ever. And so, it was really a blessing because then I got to do The Quick and the Dead, which was Woody's last movie. And I did that with Woody. And Woody and I roomed together, went out together and everything. And so I got interested, though, in acting and choir and art at Central Valley High School. And I took that with me to Wairika. And in Wairika, that was a little farm town. And the only thing they knew pretty much was farming, machinery, growing. And they as far as they were concerned, what they did is when I put in for art and drama, music, and a cappella choir and everything, they said, "You don't want that. We put the misfits there." And I said, "I don't care. I like art and I like music and I like drama and speech. And that's what I want." Because I wanted to study that because I kind of had in the back of my mind that one day I would go in the military and it might come in useful. And I think a lot of that was kind of just urging from God and God kind of putting that desire in me. And I ended up playing the lead in the class play. And they got the first write-up ever for that school. The class play actually got a write-up and review in the Sacramento Bee, and that blew them away. The music teacher had a nervous breakdown, and I went to the kids. I had double pneumonia. I went to the kids and I said, "Y'all know that actually I'm sick. I got double pneumonia." And I said, "I'll tell you what." I said, "This school does not understand art." And I told them, I said, "I've heard you guys sing. And you know that I came out of a school where we had already recorded something like 5 albums. And I said, you guys have the talent to record." And I said, "I will give you my voice and we will practice, go to work. You're going to practice your parts, that we're going to put the parts together. And we're going to give this school a concert that'll set them on their ear in 2 weeks. And if you don't want to do that, then just go out on the football field and prove they're right. You're misfits. I say you're talented, wonderful, a great group. So I'll be in the choir practice room. You guys decide if you're ready to go to work and come let me know." And I was in there about 10 minutes and they came in and said, "We're ready to go to work." Well, then the next, about 3 days later, the principal called me in. He says, "Noel," he said, we've got to disband the choir. He said, there's no credentialed teacher in the choir room, and we've got to have a credentialed teacher. And I told him, I said, math teacher has free period when we practice choir. He can grade his math papers in our practice room, and you can put choir under his teaching credentials, and I'll teach it. And so that's what they did. And just a few days or a week, whatever it was, before the concert, wasn't very long, they got a new choir director. She came in and she says, I feel bad. She says, you've got all of this stuff ready. You guys sound beautiful. And I'm supposed to come in and take over. I said, don't worry. I says, I got them ready, and you're going to carry us through the performance. Done deal. And she just kind of smiled. And she said, that's great. And choir and drama and speech became the pride of that school. And I was proud of that. I felt like I accomplished something. That we had a bunch of kids who weren't misfits anymore. They were talented kids. And they went on to be some different positions and everything. I met a few of them later and everything. Matter of fact, I met one that said that I made a difference in his life. And he was a church member, deacon in the church, had a wife and 3 children. And he said before he met me and got together with me, he was actually considering suicide. And to me, those rewards, that hit me. That I said, man, for me, this is it. And so, it's kind of like God was building the right heart in me and everything. And so I graduated there, but at the same time I was there, though, I was also taking classes at Southern Oregon University and Weed is University of California now. And so I was actually doing high school and college at the same time. And I found that I actually do better when it's like I'm doing and taking in a mass amount. I took Lamson Law School and did some stuff there, had to do that for Intel. And then when I went to Arizona, I was going to do some work together with John McCain, and he was on the Senate Hearing Committee for National Security. And so I brushed up on Arizona law, and I was married at the time, had 2 kids with asthma. They were from her previous marriage, and they put the additive in the fuel, and the kids were in the hospital and the emergency room several times that semester. So I missed a number of days. So they had to dock me 10 points across the board. After being docked 10 points across the board, if I had 100%, I was 90. I had 1 B, which was in English. I was at 97%, and they lowered it to 87%. The rest were A's, and I had a 3.73 on a 4.0 grade scale. I had a 3.73 GPA with something like 49 semester units of law in 1 semester. So, and when I flunked the language aptitude test, but I had a 178.4 on my GT score. When I went to Germany, they had to send me to Germany. I ended up teaching myself 6 years of German, including the Schwäbisch and Bayerisch dialect, in 6 weeks, and then went to the University of Erlangen and tested out. And they said I could join the first semester, 7th year, and be just a little bit behind, but they were positive I'd catch up. And it was just that, I don't know, something in me like finds reward in challenge. Especially as long as it's fair. I was always, no matter what it was, a football game, basketball game, if we trounced the other side, I didn't really enjoy it. A good close game where you had to play your max. And I lettered in football, basketball, and track. And I was in baseball for a while, but I didn't think I was that good because I didn't understand the batting averages and stuff. Every time I struck out, I felt like I let the team down. And I never liked letting the team down. So I quit that. Later, I found out that actually my stats were pro quality. That was after I'd already quit. The coach tried to tell me more, but I didn't understand that basically like a 370 batting average is basically 37%. And my coach, he told me, he says, Noel, he says, your batting average is like 900 to 950. And I said, so? He said, pros are doing great at 270. So I thought I had to cut like 500, 600, 700 points. You know, I didn't understand that that was a phenomenal batting average. But I got a single or double almost every time. We had one guy, Ron Potts, the guy that actually, when I went to see him after I joined ministry, he had to know what day and stuff I started ministry, and I found out that the entire high school, I think we had something like 480 kids or something like that, and the entire high school had a pool, and they I guess $1 a piece, and they put it in the bank like a special savings account and stuff, so it'd stay there, and they all guessed what day, what year, what month, what hour I would become a minister. So I didn't think I was doing that much preaching around school, but I guess I was. So they knew I was going to be a preacher before I did. All I knew was God was in charge of my life. I started out with God in charge of my life, and I knew that God told me I would do some things for him. And I knew it was going to be a rough life, but that I would get through. And it's kind of like major battles, major victories, you know? So God made me the boy that he wanted me to be the man that he wanted me to be, who enjoyed major battles because of the major victory. But I wouldn't pick a fight, but I wouldn't walk away from it either. And matter of fact, when I was one of the group when I was in my prodigal son years, we'd go to the bar, and each person would be 4 or 5 of us. You'd let each other person hit you as hard as they could, and if you didn't go down or get knocked out, then the next guy was up. And the first person that went down or got knocked out, they paid for the night. And I never once was knocked out. This tooth right here is actually a false tooth. I got hit hard enough that pieces of tooth went flying one time, but that was like a sucker punch in a deal. We had to more or less arrest or take a guy in. And as soon as he saw tooth fly that way and my head came back this way and I looked mad, he just dropped to his knees, put up his hands and said, I give. Made me madder than a hatter. I wanted to get at least one punch back. But once they give, that was it. You know, I followed the way we're supposed to do. No matter how bad I might want to clobber somebody, if they gave up, okay, then I took them in. And then you fill out the report and let it go from there. So it's, you know, and my dad, matter of fact, well, my dad did some boxing, and he was a sword fighter too. He was the youngest kid going to University of California, too young for sword fighting. And the coach saw him sword fighting one day, and he came down, and Dad thought he was in trouble. And the coach said, how old are you? And he told him. He said, oh, you're that prodigy boy. He says, well, you know, he said, you're too young to be on the sword fighting and fencing team. And Dad said, yeah, I know. He said, but you're a doggone good with that sword. He said, I'm going to see if I can get a waiver. And the coach actually got a waiver for him, so Dad was able to be on the fencing team. And my grandfather was a boxer. So I guess, you know, all of that was just kind of inbreeding into me to make me the fighter that I am. And that's the fighter when I found out the wrongs that were being done, when I hit seat 13 and I saw all the garbage that Deep State was doing. violations of people's civil rights and constitutional rights, using Americans to experiment on Americans like they were guinea pigs, and all of their control stuff, and then their desire to basically one day have the world under their control. Lying to the president. We tell the president what we feel the president needs to know to get the decision we want. The president needs plausible deniability. And all these excuses that I knew were bogus. And I started my fight with the biggest enemy ever in 1969, and I'm still fighting. So, God put the fighting spirit in me, and I'm not giving up. Matter of fact, I got together with Ted Gunderson when I knew I was getting out, and I gave him a bunch of evidence and testimony and everything. And I told him, sit on it. Don't let them know you got this, because they'll kill you. And he did it the way I said. And after he was out, retired, and put in the Hall of Fame, then he investigated, and he went to the director and said, hey, this guy is not a fraud. He is not a phony. His material is 100% right on. We need a full investigation. And they went after Ted. Then he started doing speaking engagements. And somehow I knew that would happen, because I told Ted, I said, we'll get together later on. God will see to it. Because I had decided I was getting back in a right standing with God. And I inside, I knew that my mission was with God. And I knew that God would put Ted and myself back together. And God gave me the wisdom to kind of guide Ted and keep him alive for as long as he was alive. And when we did the report, he validated everything that I said and all my evidence, and validated who I was, etc. And he was Hall of Fame Chief Special Investigator for the nation for the FBI. And God had me do that because that gave solid credentials. I knew they were going to use smear and fear on me. So God preset a way to defeat smear and fear years and years before they actually started using smear and fear on me, and big time. But they successfully made a lot of people afraid of me, and jobs that were supposed to go would end up not going. One of them, they wanted me to be kind of like the Secretary of the Interior, but secretary in charge of all of the civilian personnel for USERA. And then all of a sudden, the guy that was in charge in Japan decided to transfer. And I think that was an MJ-12 deal. They didn't want me in a big position like that, with that power that way. So they tried to keep me low. They tried to keep me poor. And that's one of the reasons I left the family, because they blocked my Social Security benefits. And I had disabilities from injuries and stuff and everything. And they blocked my VA benefits. But I kept fighting them for 40 years. And I finally won that battle in 2012 in U.S. District Court. So now I've got my DOD ID that says 04 and expiration indefinite. And that's because when they appointed me to my position, my authority and position was a lifetime position. So even though I'm not in and they can't use me, I still have that position and that authority, because it's for life.
Right. Let's get back to your pedagogy, your education from your father, and what that looked like. Now, you told me that Eisenhower came and saw you. Tell us about that.
Yeah. I didn't know that my dad was that close to Eisenhower. I knew that he held the Normandy Day invasion records, and you had to have orders signed by the president to see him. And, that Ike Eisenhower was involved, etc. And matter of fact, I don't even know if Ike was the one that Dad held. He was a general at the time, so he might have been the general that my dad held his 45 to one general's head at one point in time. And then the general wanted Dad transferred to his outfit, and Dad thought it would be for reprisal. But anyways, he was at least a 3, 4, or 5-star, whatever. They developed the 5-star for Ike Eisenhower as general of the armies, plural. Before that, 4-star was the highest. And so I was up at Toyon School and it goes up towards Shasta Dam. When you go to Shasta Dam, you go by Toyon School, and they had 1st through 5th grade there. And we heard that the president was going to go visit Shasta Dam, and they put me out on this little kind of like a little round abutment. It came up like this, and it had this little round abutment by the road where the road went up and everything. And they said, you're going to be out there. Ike's going to go up and he's going to go around the dam. And then when he comes back, we want you to be out on this little knoll, and you're going to wave to Ike Eisenhower, the president. And I'm like, okay. And he said, you're going to represent the school. And I actually sang for the school. Even at 4 years old, I sang at a Christmas program. Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer and stuff, got a standing ovation, did it for the Elks too. And so I'm just thinking, well, gee, I guess they like my singing. So, okay, I'm going to say hello to Ike and all that. You know, I wasn't, and I didn't know anything for quite a while, actually. And so here comes Ike Eisenhower down through with the convertible and that. And I waved, and I'm waving. Ike gives me a salute like that. And it was later, I asked my dad. I said, Dad, I says, I waved to Ike Eisenhower, but he saluted me like a soldier. And Dad said, he came by to visit Dad, and he wanted to go see one of Dad's boys. And my brother, he was like 2 years, 9 months older than me. So he was over at the high school. And I don't know if Ike went by the high school too or not. I never got a chance to ask my brother. But that put something in me too, you know, like a deeper patriotism, a deeper appreciation for the president of the United States, Ike Eisenhower, the commander in chief of the armies, plural, etc. And that really sunk deep into me that Ike Eisenhower would come to Reading to visit Dad and go all the way from like it was about 9, 10, about 11 or 12 miles up to where Toyon School was from the highway. And then it's about 5 or 6 miles up around the dam and back down. And that the president of the United States, sitting president, took that time to make that trip to see me, and out of respect for my dad, salute Dad's son. That gets me today. And I can remember that like it was yesterday. And that sunk deep. Both for an appreciation for the nation, the office of the presidency, and everything. And I think that probably put a seed in me. That's why, come hell or high water, I'll die before I let MJ-12 take control of this nation. I'll fight them to my dying breath. So that kind of, I guess that was kind of almost like a time capsule. It just kept dissolving and kept going, even to this day. You know, the things my dad did and my great granddad, and my great granddad was basically, my granddad was part Lakota Sioux. My great granddad married a Lakota Sioux princess, and actually, from what I understand, he sired Crazy Horse. But in the Sioux Nation, if a woman felt like she didn't want her husband anymore, she could pick a different husband, and that was it. And so his first wife didn't want a guy going to war because he was French Foreign Legion, and he was they made him a war chief. And so basically he sired Crazy Horse, and then he ended up marrying a Lakota Sioux princess and remained a war chief. So I think my brother and I are basically the only two that I know of that actually have paternal and maternal DNA from Crazy Horse. That's what made me crazy.
Okay. That's interesting.
Yeah. So yeah, that's my dad's side was basically French and Lakota. And then my mother's side had the Hebrew, and of course the French was French Hebrew from the tribe of Benjamin. And my mother's side was
Okay.
basically Italian from Sicily. And and then she had just a teeny touch of Maidu and a little English. And the English genes are dominant. So when the English genes are there, you end up with white skin and blue eyes. But if you look at me and Crazy Horse, the bone structure and everything and the hairline, for me, my grandfather, my dad, and Crazy Horse, I mean, you can see the family. Kaboom. Yeah, with that structure is there. And I've got a picture of Crazy Horse here, I think, somewhere. And I've even had people comment, boy, you can see. And I think I even posted that on my Facebook at one time, like a picture of Crazy Horse, and you can see the hairline and everything. My
Oh, wow.
grandfather had a little bit darker skin. You could see it in him. My dad had a little bit darker skin than me. But with my mom and the English, my brother and I, we came out with that whitewash.
Right.
So we're incognito. I was undercover incognito as a Caucasian instead of an Indian. But if they'd have known I was descendant of Crazy
Right.
Horse, they probably wouldn't have had me go where I went. But my dad was just put down as
Yeah.
basically French. And when my dad hit on his record, he just put down French. And I put down French and Italian when I went in. So, but back in those days, the Hebrew and the Indian was the kind of a hidden bloodline, because in the 40s and stuff, Indians were lower than a dog, and Hebrew, they were the Christ killers. And yet, actually, what they did is what God wanted, because if Christ didn't go to the cross, we wouldn't have salvation.
Right.
So, you know, the
So
viewpoint.
you said you were in the Cub Scouts and the Boy Scouts?
Yep. Yeah. Matter of fact, I breezed through the Cub Scouts, and I was one of the youngest Boy Scouts accepted. And I breezed. I think I went all the way through to Cub Scouts in like a year or year and a half. I
Uh-huh.
made it through all of their merit badges and all of that jazz, and then I did everything needed for the tenderfoot. So I qualified as tenderfoot. So then they automatically transferred me into Boy Scouts. I think I was about like somewhere in the 9 to 10 bracket as a Boy Scout.
A tenderfoot. So I guess tenderfoot was Weeblos. That was in between Cub Scouts and Boy Scouts for me at my age.
Yeah. You went from Weeblo to tenderfoot, Weeblo
Okay.
in Cub Scouts or whatever, and tenderfoot. Then once you got tenderfoot, you're a Boy Scout.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That makes
And
sense.
then I went and I had my tenderfoot, and before scout camp, and I was still like 10 years old or something. So in my first year before scout camp, I already made second class, scout second class. I went to scout camp, and in 2 weeks of scout camp, I made first class and star with 5 merit badges in a 2-week period. And I got honors and stuff for that. So I was something like, I guess I was close to 11 when I was a Star Scout.
Okay. Did you make it up to Eagle Scout?
No, the Troop 47 and stuff, kind of, they started having, some problems or something with, getting Scout Masters or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And my mom basically had an auto accident. And so when she had an auto accident, she was actually paralyzed for a while with her arms, and she was a beautician. So I actually basically got a part-time job and didn't have a whole lot of time for scouts. And I was sweeping Pike's parking lot, Mike's parking lot, and the hardware store parking lot and stuff. And I was straightening up all of the stuff at the hardware store. So I was actually working at about 12, 13 years old.
What hardware store was that?
That was Central Valley Hardware out in Central Valley, California, which is now Shasta Dam City.
Okay. Huh. So that's pretty much where you're raised out there in California?
Yep. Yep. And then at 13 to 14, I became a cub reporter for the Valley Times. I delivered papers, and they said I was their best delivery boy. They actually ended up giving me 3 paper routes, combined them into one. So yeah, and my brother was working, so yeah, I had to become a breadwinner for the family, and so did my brother. Yeah.
And what year was that?
13, that would be, let's see, 59, 60.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that was the turn of the revolution when things started modernizing.
Yep. And then I sold Wilnet hosiery, and I sold seeds for garden seeds and stuff. And I sold magazine subscriptions.
Wow.
I did anything I could do to try to fucking feed the family.
Right. Huh. So was that back in the hard scrabble days in California, back when like Merle Haggard was singing about?
Yeah.
He's from Bakersfield.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Huh. Wow. Different world.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So let me ask you this: what year were you born?
46.
1946. Wow.
Yeah.
December. So, having lived through various wars all over the world, what do you think about the world today?
As difficult as it was in my time, as far as hard work and everything, the work ethics, the morals, the family, the value of the family, we would get together, and play Scrabble. And our family values were there. Matter of fact, some of the other kids in the neighborhood would come to our house, and we had probably almost every kid in the neighborhood coming to our house, and we had Scrabble, we had bingo going, we had roulette going, penny ante roulette. We had a casino at home that was just like penny ante and stuff. But everybody was having fun. Mom had popcorn, and they'd have popcorn balls and everything.
Right.
And the moral values, the unity and everything was worth $1 billion compared to what is around today.
Right.
And I have a hard time with today, and we were taught to be happy with who we were. I had black friends, I had Asian friends, I had American Indian friends, I had white friends, and they were all my friends. They'd all be sleeping. We had a big old lawn, and we'd have 20 kids, 20, 30 kids on that lawn Friday night in their sleeping bags. And we were the first streakers running down to the theater in our underwear just to make it down and back before a car drove by and could see us.
Right.
And but it was good, innocent fun.
Absolutely.
And I mean, we knew girls were girls and we loved them, and boys were boys and we had fun with them.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, those were the days.
Yeah. I even had a couple of girls that slept over a couple times. One of them, her name was Penny Johnson. And I saw Penny Johnson at the class reunion, and I mean, she was gorgeous. I thought, boy, it's a good thing I was innocent when I was a kid.
Right. Not so much now.
Yeah.
So, what would you say for you that stood out in your youth that was extraordinary for you in hindsight?
I think really what stood out for me was the fact that I guess I was in many ways I was older than my years. And it was funny because we would be at a bar restaurant and I'd be at the table and we'd be eating or whatever. And I'm like 12, 13, 14 years old. And I've got 35 and 40-year-old men who would come and sit by me, pour their heart out to me, and ask me for advice. And I started helping the school at different functions, and I helped the city at different city functions and everything. And I think the way that the adults accepted me, and they didn't look at my years, they looked at who I was more in my attitude and maturity. And I was just like one of the adults, and appreciated, honored, respected, and matter of fact, when we had the 8th grade graduation, they had me sit on the end, and I thought, well, maybe it's because I'm tall. And we went to the 8th grade graduation, and Channel 12 News is there, Channel 7 News is there. They got all these news outfits there. And I'm thinking, what's going on? And all of a sudden, they said, everybody has noticed the media here, and the media is here for a very special reason. They said, we have an award. One for the male, one for a female. The male and female that has given the most to the community, to the school district, and to everything that we do. And they called me up. I didn't expect that. And that was kind of like the icing on the cake, appreciation,
Right.
And
Be honored by your peers.
Yeah. And so for me, accomplishment, recognition, and appreciation became a bigger payday than money. Matter of fact, my mom, she was the most successful hairdresser in California. Back in about 1960, they offered her $300,000 a year to go to Hollywood and do movie stars' hair.
Wow.
Yeah. And you know what her answer was? See, that God gave me the right mom, because when Dad wanted to take her to Holland and have an abortion because they guaranteed she and I both die, she said, I'd rather die trying to have the child than live knowing I killed it. And when they wanted to take us to Hollywood, Mom said, I'm not going to have my kids raised around a bunch of fruits and nuts.
And that was back then.
That was back then, 1960. So I'm not going to have my kids raised around a bunch of fruits and nuts. And that even prepared me for something later, because I was in basic training, and this hotshot lieutenant, he says, Benoist, you're from California. I said, yes, sir. He says, the only thing they've got in California are fruits and nuts. Which one are you? I said, neither, sir. He said, you don't understand me, Benoist. I want an answer. All they've got in California are fruits and nuts. Which one are you? I said, sir, fruits and nuts grow on a tree, sir. I am a tree, sir, standing tall, strong, and proud, sir. And that guy never again asked me another question. He never, ever so much as bothered me or looked my way.
That's funny. I've never heard that expression describing Hollywood or California, but it's apt for sure. Definitely.
Yep. Back in the 60s, that's what they were known for.
Right.
And gay wasn't called gay. They were called either homosexual, queer, or fruit.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it was a whole different world back then.
Yeah.
Whole different world. All right, we're rolling up on an hour. Anything you want to add about your childhood, your pedagogy from your father or any other mentors?
Well, just that I was also blessed with extremely good teachers who really cared. I remember Mrs. Engel, my first grade teacher, and she played a really important role in my life. She cared, she showed me love, and matter of fact, see, I was left-handed, and back in those days they wanted everybody writing right-handed. My mom had to threaten the school with a lawsuit to get them to let me write left-handed, and I had excelled, and then they actually held me back a year. I was actually ahead a year off the get-go, and then when they finally let me start writing left-handed, I went back to the top of the class again. And another one I remember, Mr. Simmons, fifth grade teacher, and he used to play the banjo. And if we got our lessons done, he would play the banjo. And he had this song, "Man from the city picked up a striped kitty, he's a moving on. He'll soon be gone. Held his nose while he burned his clothes, he's a moving on. He'll soon be gone." And it was a funny song, and we were all doing our work. But there was also, I was the popular kid in school, and there was this one guy who, he just didn't like me and just sat in front of me, and he stabbed me with his pencil. When he stabbed me with his pencil, I reached around, I bloused around, and I popped him in the nose, gave him a nosebleed. And Mr. Simmons called us outside, and he said, "What's going on?" And he told this guy, Sean, he says, "You go ahead and clean up in the bathroom." And then he looked at me because he knew I was a pretty good kid. He said, "What's going on?" I said, "Sean, he'll push his way in front of me in line." And we had a fight a couple times on that. And I said, "He just decides that I'm his, I'm his target." And I said, "He stabbed me with his pencil." And I showed him the stab on my leg. And Mr. Simmons says, "If he comes back and I go in the classroom, can you finish this once and for all so that there's never again another problem?" I said, "You give me permission to?" "Yes, sir, I can." So Sean came back and he said, "Where's Mr. Simmons?" I said, "He went back to the classroom and he told me to finish this." And I laid into him. And he was down on the ground. I pounded him. And he said, okay, I give. I said, "Am I ever going to have another problem with you?" He said, No. I said, "If I do, this is going to look like a picnic." And Mr. Simmons gave me permission. And I think they got after Mr. Simmons for that, because he finished this year, but then the next year he wasn't there. But I heard that they actually hired him as a principal in another school. But him standing for what was right rather than his job, I think that planted the seed in me to stand for what was right rather than stand for the job, because he did what was right. He wasn't going to let that kid or let that escalate, because next thing you know, the kid used a knife on me and maybe I'd be dead. So he made sure it got ended, and he didn't care if it cost him his job. And I'm glad they promoted him to a principal of a different school. They probably liked what he had to say. And so, it's just God all the way through my life, planting in me the values that were needed to do what I've done for 55 years and be who I am today. And that's one of the reasons, Trump wanted me for VP, and I've got a deal, Noel Benoist, VP. That's got a great sound and everything. And he started working on me for VP in March and April, long before Vance or any of the others. And I told him, "Well, I don't like DC, but if you need me, I'll go." And I thought about it more, and I thought, I probably shouldn't have said that. But I said, "If you really need me," and I said, I thought about it, and I'm probably the best one for the job, because nobody knows MJ12 and that whole operation better than me. And then they started hitting me with the weaponized low frequency laser that's in the book, The 200-Year Plan. And so I was going through some health stuff. And then about a couple of days before the convention and stuff, the humming that was going on where I was, and I broke down in Reno, and I think that was a setup. Mice ate the wiring in my car, and then I had a slip and fall on ice, and the pathway I had a slip and fall on was a sidewalk, and it was the only part of the sidewalk that didn't have salt on it. Well, usually they salt where the ice is, so I look at no ice, no salt, and I figured they melted the ice there, put a little ash in the water so it wouldn't freeze, so that's where I should walk. Well, they set that up, so that's where I would step. And when I stepped on that, my feet went up in the air. I went down, and I had a concussion. And I didn't want to go in and be another Biden. But I start coming together pretty good. And as soon as he picked Vance, there was a note came out, let Trump win. So I know their plan is to assassinate Trump, and then Vance is their president. Or if they have to, they wait 4 years and then Vance is their president. And so I'm running a write-in campaign to knock him out, because I've seen more than enough with the intel and everything, plus the stuff he's done. He is an MJ-12 mole, and there's not a shadow of a doubt in my mind about it. So we need to knock him out in order to make things work and save Trump.
Do you have enough information material to do a show on just that topic?
Yeah, because I think we could, because I could look up some of the messages, some of the text messages. I could send them to you, because he said Laura Trump told him to get together with me. Don Jr. told him to get together with me. President Trump told him to get together with me. And then we were supposed to get, and he blew it off. And then we were supposed to get together in Reno. And instead of my name being on the guest list, there was an order for them to hold me for the CIA.
Okay.
So I'll start going through the emails and text messages and stuff, and pull up some of that stuff, and then I'll send it to you, and you can show it on the air when we talk about it.
Okay, good enough.
Matter of fact, I'll get some too of Trump and me as VP.
Yeah, there you go. All right, Noel, thank you for being here. Let me close out the show. You want to say goodbye to everybody?
People, I love you. I love America, and I love everybody who is American, who is pro-American, and the rest of them, I'll pray for them, and I kind of like say love them, but at a distance. I wish they'd change, and if they don't want to accept the love, then I don't have a problem smacking them down. But America first is the way I've lived from birth, and that's the way I'll die. Is America first, God and country. And you know what's America is the only one that has not been allowed to say politically correct, we are a Christian nation. There's a Hindu nation, a Buddhist nation, there's a Muslim nation, etc. Now, why is it that the world does not want America to proclaim themselves to be a Christian nation? And I say that's because that's the highest power, and that's the one that everybody else should be trying to get to.
Right. All right.
So love you, and see you again.
Thank you, Noel. All right, there you have it, folks. Another chapter in the book for Noel Benoist, The Pedagogy of Noel. Thank you for being here, everybody. I appreciate you, and I'll see you on the next one. Y'all have a great week.